right, fire it up. Let's do your thing here, bud. Nobody's any better at this than you are.
That's fine. Take a deep breath.
Give them hell at the end. Good luck to you.
Fight like hell like we do every week. You are the best here. Brett, be affirmative. You told me to get on.
Info. Ready. Ready. Go slow. Green, green, green. Lock it down, lock it down.
I'm destroyed, and I just got drove through like 6 times on the 14th. What the f*** is he thinking? That is the stupidest thing I've seen in my career. Literally.
Everything you described is accurate. Haven't even finished the second stage yet. Half the field's wrecked.
Hell yeah!
11 got it. Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work.
Keep putting yourself in position, we'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
10-4, great job, guys.
And welcome back to Racing in the Draft. My name is Mark, and we had Pocono, Pennsylvania for the Great American 400 this weekend. Thanks for joining in. Back home after a fun trip in Florida. Hope everybody's had a great week. And before we head to Pennsylvania, let's take a look at the craziness of Chicago. Once again, rain affected the race dramatically. Ended up being a shortened race after they even shortened it from 100 laps to 75. They still only got, I think, to 58 after rain delays and wet weather tires. I do have to say it was quite interesting watching all the different strategies with the different tires. But when building lineups, you look at forecasts and go, okay, it looks like it's going to be okay. And literally 10-15 minutes before they get in their cars, all of a sudden it's raining, and you go, oh, that's going to hurt my lineups. And well, I was looking good until about the last 2 to 3 laps. So if they could have just shortened the time by about 5 minutes, I would have been in great shape. But I still ended up scraping by just a little bit, and hopefully this weekend. I put in the footnotes for today's race that, hey, it looks like it's going to be 84 degrees, 10% chance of rain, and all of a sudden I looked at Twitter/X, and Bob Pockers goes, hey, look, we've got a thunderstorm headed towards the track. And sure enough, probably about this time that I'm doing the video, they're probably having torrential downpours at Pocono. It does look like a pretty small cell and looks pretty isolated, so looks like it'll go through, wash the track clean everything up, and move out of the way. I think we should be fine for the rest of the race. But for Chicago, yeah, how about Joey Hand and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. both making the optimal lineup and having the most points in the optimal lineup? Yeah, it was all place differential. And that's kind of what we thought. There was just not enough laps to really have any dominator points really play a factor for the race, and that's pretty typical for shorter races, and especially when you only go to 58 laps. It really definitely disturbs. It definitely does not bode well for dominator points. I mean, you had Joey Hand who led 7 laps. Alex Bowman leading 8 and Ty Gibbs leading 17. That by itself is the majority of the laps. And, you know, Joey Hand coming from 38th to 4th. What a run for him. It was all strategy. Also, Joey Hand's really good on road courses/street courses. He's a road course expert. Does not normally run in the Cup Series. So good for Joey Hand for having a good finish. Almost got the win. But Alex Bowman breaking an 80-win losing streak and pulling off the victory. And then he backs it up this weekend with a pretty good practice session and qualifying session. So we'll see if momentum is on the side of Alex Bowman for this weekend. But you can see the rest of the people in the lineup. I mean, we had $8,800 left on salary cap for Chicago. That's, I mean, we're almost bordering Daytona Talladega type optimal lineups. That's what happens when you get what tires. So our optimal lineup challenge is now getting pretty tight at the top. Brad K and Tyler Reddick both with 7. Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell both with 6. Noah Gregson, Ty Gibbs, and William Byron with 5 so far this year. All right. Yeah, definitely missed a lot down towards the bottom. Got a little bit towards the top right. Either way, when I looked at all of the different contests I were in, nobody was close to having this optimal lineup. I mean, yeah, who leaves 8,800? I mean, I'm all about leaving a couple $1,000s on the table for races like this, but 8,800 was just a little unexpected. So, all right, let's look at. So I started doing. I keep diving deeper and deeper into practice and qualifying and seeing if there's anything that is available to us. And of course, when practice is on a dry track, then we go to racing on a wet track. You pretty much can just throw most of this out the window, and then you get chaos and calamity, and your top 2 best drivers theoretically at the track end up wrecking and finishing last and next to last. It definitely kind of throws all of this data out the window. So there's really not much here other than I want to be fully transparent and show the good, the bad, the ugly, and this was just, there was nothing here. It was just bad. I mean, other than, let's see, other than Todd Gillen and William Byron were the only 2 highlight spots, and they really weren't that great. I mean, they did finish 4th and 5th in total points for DraftKings. Now, the overperforming from qualifying, I mean, Kyle Busch, kind of the only one. He finished 9th in the race, 7th in DraftKings. Michael McDowell, 5th to 13th. So not much real data here to kind of look at. Same thing with the 5-lap average. Just, I mean, when we go from dry to wet, it just changes the full dynamics completely. So, and once again, these were the fastest laps. I mean, Kyle Larson and Shane Van Gisbergen, 1st and 2nd, ended up finishing 39th and 40th. Ty Gibbs ended up having a pretty solid practice and finish, so good on Ty Gibbs. So a lot of the fast guys did end up kind of staying up there, but I mean, pretty much everybody's money was on Larson and Gibbs and Van Gisbergen. Our value picks, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I mean, he didn't start well, he didn't practice well, but you know, with strategy and some attrition, he ended up having a really good day. Daniel Hemrick, same thing. I mean, Austin Dillon was the only one that kind of, I don't know. I'm just gonna throw this whole thing away because at least for Chicago, because when you go from dry to wet and the different conditions, it just skews all of the practice numbers. So let's head to Pocono. I'm done with that. It was a great race. It was fun to watch. I hope they go back. I hope that they start the race earlier. I hope that they can actually race 75 laps in dry weather and we can really get a good test of what Chicago is, because I think it's a really neat event and it really showed well on TV and it really showed some different dynamics of what these guys can do in their race cars. It's just when you start to put weather involved in it, it kind of hurts the entire race. So it was exciting to watch. It was lots of drama and lots of fun things, but I would love to see just a dry track like we saw for the Xfinity race. All right, Pocono. Let's go to Pocono. All right, Pocono. It's a tricky little triangle-shaped track, as you can see by this picture. It is a long flat track, 2.5 miles in length, 3 turns, not 4, 3 turns, because it's a triangle. 14 degrees in turn 1, 8 degrees in turn 2, which is the tunnel turn, and 6 degrees in turn 3. The race length is 160 laps with a total of 112 nominator points. I do not see any one driver being a per se dominant driver, because of the long straightaways, you can get some drafting speed. So if you've got a drafting partner or two and the leader's out front, that drafting pack will end up turning a faster lap than the guy running by himself out front, even with clean air. It's just how drafting works. Not sure that, yeah, that's right. But so the fast lap, which is the bigger of the two dominator points, ends up kind of getting skewed a little bit, kind of like a super speedway. And then laps led, we just don't have a whole lot of laps, so there's not a whole lot of points. So I mean, literally somebody coming from 28th and finishing 4th is going to have the same amount of points with somebody who leads. I mean, what's that difference? 30 or 24 points. You would have to lead. There's not enough. I don't think there's enough laps. You'd have to lead 80. Right, 85 to 90 laps, and I just don't see somebody being that dominant at this track. Other tracks to compare to, which really is none. New Hampshire, it's flat. Iowa, not really. Phoenix, not really. Gateway, kind of. It is flat. So I mean, if you did turns 3 and 4 of Gateway, might be a little bit similar to maybe turn 3. The only track that really compares well to it is Indianapolis. So we'll get a lot of data from Pocono that will translate over to what will happen at Indy. But we also haven't run Indy on the oval track in a long time. I think it was pre-COVID since we've done that. So it'll be interesting to see now that we've get Indy back as a full oval. It'll help give us some data for tracks like New Hampshire, for tracks like Pocono, and maybe even a little bit of Gateway. You could also potentially throw Nashville into this mix. It's another flat track for the most part, but it is concrete, so it kind of gets skewed a little bit. But those are kind of the track comparisons when you're kind of looking at things. But optimal lineups, like I kind of said prior, this track is going to run a blend of a super speedway style when we're looking at points, and is going to also race kind of like a road course because of the lack of laps. And it's going to be mostly place differential is where the majority of our points are going to come from. So what I'm probably looking at targeting is probably 4 place differential guys and probably 2 guys per lineup that will that'll start up front and finish up front, and potentially get some small amount of dominator points. I mean, as we can see, so Kyle Busch in 2022 ended up leading 63 laps. Now, 2022 was a little strange because this is the year that both he and Denny Hamlin were DQ'd. But I left the data in here because, I mean, yeah, a piece of tape on the front may cause them to be a little bit faster, but they were still, I think, fast enough that they would have still finished first and second. But because they made adjustments that they shouldn't have, they got disqualified. But I'm still keeping, because this is still pretty cognizant of what happens. Sorry, the Rumble stream did not ever start. Start it again. All right, yeah, because I stream on Rumble and on YouTube. So if you're ever looking for an alternate source, I usually also stream on Rumble. Seems like it's having connection issues. All right, back to Pocono. So yes, DraftKings lineups, it's going to be place differential. It's going to be starting position, and a sprinkling of dominators from the guys that finish up front, that stayed up front. We can look at some of these other ones. Don't think they really compare all that well because, I mean, Nashville became an absolute crazy mess with 5 restarts at the end. Yeah, I mean, none of this really compares. The only two that we can really look at are Pocono, the two previous Pocono races. And this is kind of how it even fell for the Truck Series and for the Xfinity Series. So I think we're pretty safe with looking at 3 to 4 dominate or 3 to 4 place differentials and 1 to 2 start from the front, finish up front type of races. So just keep that in mind. And this kind of shows also the same type of thing. When we look at last year's people or drivers that started in their Draftkings points. So starting in the top 5, 4 of them made the top 15 in Draftkings points, which kind of shows that it's important to be up front and stay up front for points, but it's also important to have place differential because we also have 5 people starting 21st to 30th. If we look down here, we had 7 people out of the entire lineup that had more than 10 spots gained, and then we had a little sprinkling of Dominator points. So kind of lines up, really, the data lines up with what we're kind of seeing in previous optimal lineups. I mean, 2021, we had nobody in the top 5, 2 top in the top 10, 9 people from 11th through 20th. Now that was a little skewed because they inverted the fields between these two races. They were doing that funny show up and just race type thing going on. For our averages, really the sweet spot looks to be 11 through 20 when we're kind of building our lineups, and a little bit 21 to 30. Nobody really 31st or worst really makes the top 15 in points. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're building those lineups. All right, let's try this again. We had a dry track yesterday, and they will not race on a wet track today. So this data should potentially flow through from practice, and the time that they practiced is going to be similar to, it's going to be a little hotter today than it was during practice and qualifying yesterday, but it's not by much. It's going to be pretty close. Hold on one second. Here. Let's get fixed. All right. There we go. Welcome to those who are on Rumble. And the people on YouTube, thanks. Make sure you hit me up in the chat. Who do you like today? Who do you not like today? I know one of the guys that usually chats a lot, Matt, is busy doing some personal work on his house. Hopefully that's going well, Matt. But you know, anybody else that's here, hit me up in the chat, hit that like button, and let's get into practice in qualifying. So Bubba Wallace was 4th in practice. So this is showing the difference between where they practiced and where they qualified. And is there a chance that they can be as fast in the race as they were in practice? I mean, typically that's what practice is for, and that's hopefully what we're kind of seeing is they just missed or made a mistake on their qualifying lap because they only get one shot at it. And Bubba Wallace did do that. He did mess up his qualifying lap, so he was 4th fastest in practice, and I think that's a pretty good representation. I think Bubba Wallace easily had top 10 speed, and he qualified 29th, so that's a great area of opportunity to possibly exploit. Now, I mean, the problem is this data is out there for everyone, so I expect Bubba Wallace probably to be decently owned. I don't think he's going to be, he could probably be like 8th or 9th most owned driver. It could be a little bit higher, but I think a lot of people are going to be targeting some other people. We'll get to them in a minute. But Michael McDowell also in the same boat. 16 spots of differential between practice and qualifying. Austin Cindric was 13. The Austin Cindric makes me scared. He had one good race this year, and not sure that just happened to be what it was. Corey LaJoy, maybe starting 30th. So if we're looking for somebody kind of towards the back, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. did really well last year, but it was really a strategy play that came in. And, you know, the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and JTG Doherty definitely like to play strategy games. So potentially look to see them coming up. I'm not sure it's all on speed. Daniel Suarez showed decent speed in practice. Tyler Reddick super fast in practice and qualified 7th. So it was 6 spots. But as you can see, I kind of put a number value on all these guys. So 10 points I'm giving to Bubba Wallace for being underperforming in qualifying, but maybe not overperforming, but compared to how they performed in practice. Overperforming, guys that were that ended up qualifying better than they practiced, which means they potentially are going to fall back once the race starts. A good example here may be a Josh Berry, but Josh Berry may have been on the same plan as Denny Hamlin. I'll explain that in a second. But as Zane Smith, he practiced in 29th in speed and then is going to qualify in 9th. I don't know if Zane Smith stays in the top 10. I mean, it'd be cool to see, but I'm not putting a whole lot of trust into the qualifying lap here. So this one, and as you can see, I put a point value over here of -10 for something like that. And the same thing, I still gave a -9 for Denny Hamlin. But it's just, here's where they practiced and here's where they qualified, and it's a negative differential. Whereas Bubba Wallace is a positive differential for Draftkings. So I put a value on that. I did the same thing with the 5-lap averages. Same type of kind of thing fell into place here. We're seeing similar type of things. A couple of new players, Ross Chastain, Brad Keselowski, maybe some guys that we can look at and target also. But I gave them a points value also. Then I also took into account who was absolutely, truly the fastest in practice for single lap, and I did 5-lap consecutive average because very few drivers actually got the 10-lap consecutive average because it takes almost a full minute to get around this track, and 10 laps, I think the most I saw for practice was like 15 laps, and not many people got to 10-lap consecutive average because they came in and made adjustments. But either way, those also got points. So putting all the points together, just to kind of give you an idea of who maybe you can target. But Wallace ended up with 33 points, Austin Cindric with 28, Michael McDowell with 27, and so on. And on the negative side, Zane Smith, Josh Berry, Denny Hamlin, Austin Dillon. Now, I think the Denny Hamlin piece of the pie is not a true representation, just as much as I don't think Austin Cindric is a true representation. So I think there are some things that we just have to use general knowledge, because we don't have access to the data that truly tell us what's going on. If you happen to watch practice yesterday, and it drives me crazy because NBC has this data. I wish NASCAR would release the data of per lap speed for each driver in practice. Number one, it could tell us if somebody was slow in a 5 or 10 lap consecutive run, if they potentially slowed because a car got in their way, or something like they missed a pit road entry, or something happened in front of them that caused them to slow down, or they just missed a corner and had a slower 10-lap consecutive average compared to everyone else. And you could see that data if we had every lap information within the practice session. And what I'm kind of getting to is they were showing the difference between Austin Cindric and Denny Hamlin. And Denny Hamlin's speeds for the laps that they showed, I think it was like 7 laps. Denny Hamlin stayed within a couple tenths of each other and never really had much of a fall off, where Austin Cindric speed came in very quick. I think he was 6th fastest, but by like the 4th lap, he had slowed by almost half a second, where Denny Hamlin didn't really fall off much more than maybe a 10th. So if you have that lap by lap data, you can kind of begin to see trend lines and who's running a more traditional race setup compared to a potential qualifying setup. You can see who's going to be better at taking care of their tires. Now, we know Denny Hamlin's really good at Pocono, number one. Number two, he's also really good about saving his equipment, saving his tires. Same thing could be said with a guy like Brad Keselowski, a Josh Berry. Most of these guys are veteran racers who have learned that sometimes the short run speed is not as important as a long run speed, especially at a track like Pocono, where we could end up having 20, 25 laps of green flag. And when you're talking about a 2.5 mile track, that's a long ways to go. I mean, that's almost 30 minutes of green flag run. And that will begin to, if you've over abused your tires, especially with the temperatures getting up to 84, track temperature will be up closer to, the mid 90s, maybe even 100 degrees. The tire wear will start to show up there. So that's kind of where this number game kind of gets played, and then we kind of have to use just some general knowledge on what we saw in practice that we don't have hard data that I can produce on a piece of paper. If NASCAR would just, I'm not looking for anything weird or funky. I'm not looking for the SMT data. I'm not looking for throttle responses. I'm not looking for that. I just want a per lap speed in each lap for each driver, and I can decide for that information however I want. I don't need to know how much percentage they were turning the wheel and all that jazz. I just want numbers. Let me break it down from there. All right, so our practice speeds. Tyler Reddick was fastest in single lap, 53.498. And then Martin Truex Jr. right behind him, about 100th off. No, it's about a 10th off. Sorry. So Tyler Reddick was very, very fast in practice, and ended up qualifying in the top 10. Same thing with Martin Truex Jr., William Byron. The normal players at Pocono are going to show up. And got a Ty Gibbs who qualified well. So I mean, it's pretty much 2311 and Gibbs, Joe Gibbs Racing versus Hendrick today. I don't know how well the Fords are going to do at this track. This type of track does not typically play super well with the Fords. But we've also seen the Fords get much better as the year has progressed. So we'll just have to kind of keep an eye on that. I'm going to probably be much heavier on the Toyotas and Hendrick game than the Ford game. I will have some interest because there is some place differential, like a Michael McDowell, that do interest me. But here are your 8 fastest in practice and your 4 slowest in practice. Noah Gragson, Justin Haley, John Hunter Nemechek, and JJ Haley. A little strange that Justin Haley was that slow in practice after he's been pretty quick all year so far. So be interesting to I haven't been able to dive in to find out why Justin Haley was that slow in practice and qualifying. Because he has run fairly well this year. So surprising. Our best value picks. This kind of seems to be where we find some of the better information. Austin Dillon is starting 17th, or he practiced 28th. Okay, that's probably not a good thing. Zane Smith, same thing. Practiced in 29th, qualified 9th. That's the wrong way in place differential for a cheap driver. John Hunter Nemechek, 36th in practice, and then 32nd. Not great. Corey LaJoy. We have some positive place differential here, potential, and only 2 spots of place differential here for Daniel Hemrick. So maybe, possibly, if we're looking for some cheap guys that might be some interest, Corey LaJoy and Daniel Hemrick are possible. Harrison Burton qualified much better than he practiced. Harrison Burton also last year, when you're looking back at stats from last year, Harrison Burton did end up with a really good finish. It was due to some strategy late in the race that gave Harrison Burton that. Same thing with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. But, I mean, if things line up well, they're willing to roll the dice and take a shot. That could also backfire and bite them. Cody Ware and JJ Yeley are both just slow. I mean, unless we have a huge amount of attrition, which Pocono typically does not have, I'm not sure Cody Ware and JJ Yeley are really in the game of being played today. So these 3, Corey LaJoy, Daniel Hemrick, and Harrison Burton, all potential cheaper shots that we could take. All right, let's get into the driver breakdown. Denny Hamlin at $11,000, the most expensive guy on the board, starting in 4th. He was in Group 1 of practice. I'm going to break this whole page down, and then we'll kind of skim through the rest of them. I just like to give a full detail of what we're looking at here. He was in practice Group 1 and qualifying Group 1, which also qualifies the outside lane, so the even numbers in the starting grid. He was 24th in single lap, 21 total laps of practice, which I think may have been one of the highest. We'll see as we go through this. He was 15th in a 5-lap consecutive average. Now, like I said before, it was great that we saw the data come from NBC that showed why Denny Hamlin may have been a little slower, a little bit off from everyone else, and then goes and qualifies 4th, because Denny Hamlin was going out to practice a race trim, and he was going out to practice long run speed and making sure that he took care of his tires, and he wanted to see where he was going to be after 20 laps. And he was good. He was still only probably about a 10th off. So kind of keep that in mind when we're looking at some of these speeds, some of them, and that's, like I said, that's the missing piece that we don't have access to, that I wish they would release. But boy, I've complained about that enough. And then I did the 5 tracks that I thought compared closest to Pocono, because we only have 2 years of data really with Pocono with this next gen car. And the last gen car does not, the data does not transfer very well, so I don't really typically include any of that information. But New Hampshire from earlier, 2 weeks ago, Nashville from 3 weeks ago, Gateway from 4 weeks ago, are all tracks that can be slightly similar. And then there's really nothing similar to Pocono. There's really nothing similar to New Hampshire. There's nothing really similar to Nashville. There are tracks that have characteristics that are similar, but either way, Denny Hamlin has 2 wins, 3 top 5s, 3 top 10s, 4 top 20s, a 50.5 Draftkings average, and an 8th place average finish. He did finish first in this Pocono race last year. He also finished first in the Pocono race in 2022, but got disqualified. So that's where this asterisk 8 is in, and you could also put an asterisk at this 2. The record books only say 1, but I keep this information there because when DraftKings paid out in 2022, they paid it as he finished in first. They had paid it out and paid out the money, and then NASCAR DQ'd them, and DraftKings had already given out the money. A little bit of controversy there. But either way, so that's part of why the asterisks there, and the averages and everything else are with him finishing in first. Just full transparency. So that's a full breakdown. This is his full stats at Pocono. His 34 total starts with 8 wins, with an asterisk. 16 top 5. So, I mean, almost half of the time he's finishing in the top 5. Denny Hamlin's just really, really good at Pocono. Now, with that being said, he's going to probably be pretty heavily owned. So keep that in mind. Kyle Larson, 10,800, and funny that they're both priced next to each other because they typically will race together, and I would bet at some point today they're going to be racing next to each other again. And Kyle Larson says he is good with Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin says he's good with Kyle Larson, but they're both super competitive. Let's see if they can have a clean Pocono race, because Denny Hamlin has wrecked 2 of his nemesis twice in the last 2 years at Pocono. So we'll see what happens this year. Kyle Larson kind of seems to be squarely in Denny Hamlin's mind as being his biggest competitor. So we'll see. But at the 5 tracks that were compared, practice. He was in the first group. He was 8th and 31st in 5-lap, and that's a huge fall off. And I don't know if there was an issue or a problem because I don't have the data. So that seems to be quite a drop off for Kyle Larson. I'm not real sure what happened there. I know he spun on his final lap, and I don't know if that was the lap that was being recorded in his 5-lap consecutive average. It's just hard to say because I don't have that information. But total, he finished 20th last year. That was more because Denny Hamlin put him in the wall. He was racing Denny Hamlin for first place when that happened. Kyle Larson, I mean, he literally had a flat tire 1 year and gave the win to Alex Bowman. Then he won, and then he had an issue with Hamlin last year where they were fighting for the lead. That ended up costing him. So Kyle Larson's been in contention to win almost every race this year. So Kyle Larson should be somebody to watch for. Hendrick cars looked extremely fast in qualifying. So Hendrick's going to be good here. Joe Gibbs Racing is going to be good here. And 2311 should be probably pretty good here. Christopher Bell, 10,500, starting in 13th. 16th in single lap, 11th in 5-lap consecutive average. He does have one win out of the 5 tracks we're comparing to, but if we look at Pocono, he does not have a win here yet at Pocono, but does have 1 top 5, 3 top 10s. Starting in 13th, I do kind of like a little bit of Christopher Bell. I think he might get overlooked, especially when he's sandwiched between Hamlin, Larson, and our next gentleman here, Martin Truex Jr., who was starting in 3rd and who was extremely fast in practice. He was 3rd in single lap, 1st in 5-lap consecutive average. He finished 3rd in this race last year. He's got 2 wins at the Tricky Triangle. This is kind of a home track, again, for Martin Truex Jr. Yes, I know they have like 3 home tracks. Dover, Pocono, and New Hampshire. I don't know why they claim 3 home tracks, but they do. So, either way, Martin Truex Jr. is easily somebody that could start up front and finish up front, potentially even get him that first win of this year. We'll have to wait and see. I do like Martin Truex Jr. He could also go a little bit over or under owned because of his starting spot and because of his trending history this year has been good, but not top 3 good. So some people might fade off of him because he hasn't been finishing as well as he should. William Byron, same thing. William Byron's definitely been on a little bit of a downward trend, even though he has had a couple of decent finishes. His race inside of the race has not looked as good. But William Byron starting in 2nd. His practice speeds were 2nd in single lap and 5-lap consecutive average. And I mean, as you can see, what have you done for me lately? In the last pretty much 3 races, including the Poconos, he doesn't have a top 10. 17.6. If we look at his total averages at Pocono, it's a 10.1, not bad. 5 top 10s, 10 top 20s. But this type of race does set up pretty well for a William Byron. And, you know, if you're looking for a good rebound track, starting outside pole, this could be an interesting spot. But I could also see the potential of fading him a little bit or not having as much ownership. Because realistically, the 1st and 2nd place guys don't typically end up scoring super high on Draftkings. They could still end up with decent finishes, but because somebody like a Bubba Wallace starting in 28th finishes 8th, typically beats him in points. Tyler Reddick, this is probably a decent pick right here. Starting in 7th, we got a small amount of place differential, but Tyler Reddick was 1st in single lap. He was 3rd in 5-lap consecutive average. He actually had a exact speed as Truex, and I did a double check on that, and they did have exactly the same speed down to the 100th. But he has a 3.8 average finish at the 5 tracks we're comparing to. 6 starts here at Pocono, 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, 4 top 20s. Tyler Reddick, I think, is a solid pick with a slight place differential. Not by much, but I mean, all it takes is five spots. I mean, if he gets up to 2nd, that's 5 more points plus the 43 that you get. I mean, now you're at almost 50 points. That's going to put you probably in at least the top 10, if not. And that, you know, I said that's not without leading any laps. Potentially putting you at least in optimal lineup range. So I do like the Tyler Reddick play for today. Chase Elliott's another really good one to potentially target today. starting in 11th. He was 11th in single lap. In the last 5 races we're comparing to, he's got 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, 5 top 20s. Even though last week he did miss his top 20 consecutive streak by 1 spot. Thank you, Dan Flores. He finished 10th in this race last year at Pocono, and his total stats for Pocono, I mean, 4 top 5s, 9 top 10s. That's probably the biggest stat, is 9 out of 14 top 10s, and a 13.9 average finish. I don't mind running some Chase Elliott today. He should probably end up solidly with the top 10, maybe even a top 5. Not sure if he can really battle for the win. I think there's some better drivers to battle for the win, but I think a top 5 is definitely in the potential for Chase Elliott. Ryan Blaney, 9,300. He was one of the faster Fords in practice and qualifying. I still don't really love the play. His averages at Pocono is a 14.4. The 5 tracks we're comparing to, it's a 24th. Ryan Blaney kind of he's been good but not great as of late, and he does have the win in his back pocket, so maybe they're just not hitting on the right strategies. But either way, starting in 8th, I'll have a small ownership stake in Ryan Blaney, but I'm probably not going to be very heavy. Ty Gibbs, is this the week? Can Ty Gibbs get the win? Sure, he was 6th in single lap, 6th in 5-lap consecutive average. Looking at Pocono, this is one of his better tracks with an 11.5 average finish. I'm not sure he's got a better average finish at any track in his short 2-year careers in the Cup Series. So this may line up pretty well for Ty Gibbs. He actually has run really well in the Xfinity Series at Pocono also. He finished 5th in this race last year, starting from the pole, and you have the best pit stall. Could be very, very important in this race. And I think Ty Gibbs could get out and probably lead the first 30 laps. It has shown that clean air is king here at Pocono. I could easily see Ty Gibbs getting out and leading the first 30 laps, and 30 lead laps it's not a ton of points. I mean, what is that? Like 9.5 points or something along those lines. No, it's not even that. 2.5, 5, 7.5 points. But 7.5 points, if you can finish even in second place, puts you right where I was saying Tyler Reddick was probably going to be. So probably puts him, if Ty Gibbs can lead the first bunch and then finish in the top 3, it's a solid day. And at $9,000, I think there's value here. I think he could actually potentially even get the win. I forgot to look. I don't think he was in the top 5 of the betting odds. It's coming across the screen right now. Hamlin's at 370. Truex was at 450. Larson at 550. And Gibbs was 600, so 6-1. So I mean, go throw $5 on a little bit of Gibbs and win $30 potentially. All right, Brad Keselowski, $8,800, starting 14th. He was 17th in single lap, 8th in 5-lap consecutive average. This is a track that he is decent at. Practice speeds were fair. His average finishes over the 5 races we're comparing to, 17.6. He was a 16th place finish. This kind of lines up with might be able to scratch a top 10, but I don't know. I think 10th place is kind of a worry where Brad K could end up finishing. Maybe with some strategy calls, he gets into a top 5 type thing. I'll have a little bit of ownership in Brad Keselowski, but I'm not going to be very heavy on him. But I don't think the field will be either. There's nothing here that screams huge place differential day or go out and lead a bunch of laps type of day or finish top 5. So I feel a little bit off on that. And Joey Logano, 13th in single lap, 27th in 5-lap consecutive average. Kind kind of the same spot as Brad K. And what have you done for me lately, Joey? He just has struggled. Other than getting that crazy Hail Mary win at Nashville, he has not been any better than 10th. He's been more like 18th to 20th. So he finished 35th in this race last year. I just think the struggles will continue for Joey Logano. I will be pretty light on Joey. Ross Chastain, $8,400, starting in 19th. He was 12th in single lap, 14th in 5-lap consecutive average, 20.4 average finish, and a 27.9 average finish at Pocono. The tricky triangle has not been kind to Ross Chastain, and Denny Hamlin at Pocono with Ross Chastain has not been kind. That definitely has affected his numbers a little bit, but either way, Ross Chastain has had troubles getting a decent finish out of the tricky triangle. So Ross Chastain starting 19th. Yeah, I'll take a few shots because he does have a decent amount of place differential potential here. But I mean, if you probably will look for possibly a sleepy pick, as Matt likes to call it. One of our viewers likes to always find the sleepy pick. Ross Chastain may be a sleepy pick. Probably not real sleepy, but maybe a little bit. Kyle Busch, 24th, and the woes continue for Kyle Busch. He kept saying all during practice, hey, I can't feel anything in the steering wheel. There's something wrong with the steering box. Blah, 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 blah. 21st in single lap. They didn't ever get to a 5-lap because they were trying to diagnose what was going on with the steering box. They say they made a repair that fixed it. Not sure how that happens because it's kind of a closed box. They say they were able to fix it without having to drop to the rear. Keep an eye on that. I think there's potential that they actually end up changing that steering box out because if that's going to be the case and Kyle is having trouble feeling the front end of the car and he's having trouble feeling the rear end of the car, this could be a very dangerous day for Kyle Busch. He has just been on the struggle bus lately, and I'm not sure that these symptoms get any better for him. So I might have a couple of shots at Kyle Busch, but not much. Might be even complete fade. Chris Buescher, $8,000 starting in 18th. Chris Buescher does have a win here. Now, it was a very foggy day in Pocono when that happened, and it shortened the race. They got him that win. Other than that one win, 1 top 10 and 8 top 20s. I guess he may have finished top 10, but even with the fog, but kind of skews his stats a little bit. But he has gone on to proven that he can actually win regular races and not just weather-shortened races, but a 20.8 average finish, even with that win at Pocono. This is not probably one of his best tracks, but from 18th, I think he's probably maybe a 10 to 12th place driver. Maybe you could take a few shots on him, but I'm not expecting lights out from Chris Buescher this weekend. Alex Bowman, last week's winner, might have a little bit of momentum on his side, so definitely keep that in mind. Now that he's got that monkey off his back, hopefully he has recovered from all the bourbon that he drank last Sunday night. I heard him on Dale Jr.'s podcast. He sounded like he was okay. Long night, but sounded like he was okay. 15th in single lap, 12th in 5-lap, qualified pretty well. Not the best averages for Alex Bowman, and he did steal a win again. Seems to be his MO. When he was in second place, so he was having a decent day when Kyle Larson entered turn 3 and blew a tire, and Alex Bowman got the win. Happens sometimes. That's why it's good to be in second. So when the leader has a mistake, you get to capitalize. And he capitalized that day. So stealing that win for Alex Bowman that one day in 2021. But either way, Alex Bowman is starting in 6th. Other than the momentum thing going for Alex Bowman, I don't know how well this ends up going. I might have a little bit of ownership, but I'm not going to be. Especially when you've got a Bubba Wallace who was faster in practice, has a better average finish, and is starting much worse with a huge amount of place differential. Now, with that being said, he's probably going to be pretty heavily owned. I think Bubba Wallace could be top 5, even top 3 of the most owned drivers today. So keep that in mind. If you're looking for a sleeper, this is not it. The Bubba Wallace 7,600 starting in 29th. I think this lines up pretty well for at least a top 10 type of day for Bubba Wallace, as long as he can kind of stay away from Alex Bowman. I'm sure that feud is probably dying down at this point. Maybe not. Daniel Suarez probably wants to stay away from Chase Elliott after last weekend, or vice versa. $7,500 starting in 16th. He was decent in practice. 9th in single lap, 10th in 5-lap consecutive average. Got a decent average finish for Daniel Suarez with a 16.9. Yeah, once again, I think we're kind of looking at, he might sneak a top 10, but probably 10th to 12th, maybe 13th type of finish for Daniel, or maybe worse, as he did last year. But I don't love and don't hate the Daniel Suarez play. The Trackhouse cars don't seem to be lined up for setting the world on fire today. So, take a couple of shots, but I don't think it's anything super wonderful to think about. Noah Gragson, $7,300. 5 tracks we're comparing to. He's got a 21.4 average finish. He finished 22nd in this race last year. Doesn't have a top 20, but 2 of those races were with crap equipment. He's been racing above his averages all year long. How much better? Noah has been surprising this year on tracks that you go, okay, he's out to lunch. It's not happening. He ends up running top 10. Starting in 25th, I don't mind potentially taking some shots on Noah because there is a decent amount of place differential, and he has a win here in the Xfinity Series at Pocono. So he knows how to get around. He just hasn't had the car in the Cup Series to do very well. So maybe this year you can kind of get into that top 20, head towards that top 10. I'm not thinking that Noah Gragson's going to go out and win this race. I'm sure anything's possible. But, I think a solid top 15 for Noah would be a pretty good day for DraftKings at $7,300. So I don't mind taking some shots there. Same thing with Chase Briscoe. This track just has not been kind to him. He's only got 1 top 20 out of 4 starts, 17.2 average finish out of the 5 races we're comparing to. Practice speed's kind of like Noah. We're not good. 33rd in single lap, 26 in 5-lap consecutive average. So I don't know if maybe I don't know. They're definitely got some work to do. Now, the nice thing about Pocono is it's so big. Even if you're struggling a little bit to start this race, you will get some pit stops to make some adjustments and can kind of work your way through the field, and you're not going to go a lap down. It's 2.5 miles around. It takes a minute to get around the track. You've got to have something catastrophic happen. Kind of like yesterday in the Xfinity Series race, you had some tires get blown, and even when that happened, depending on where it happened, you were able to get to pit road, get your tire changed or fixed, and get back out before losing a lap. It's just a big place. So I think Briscoe and Gragson and most of these guys at Stewart-Haas will have time to work on the car and potentially get better as the race progresses. So starting 28th, I don't mind taking some shots there. Josh Berry, 5th, but he was 23rd and 20th in practice. Has me a little bit concerned that we're upside down, and he just overqualified. What's up, Wyatt? Yes, absolutely. Last night was a tough night. Don't really want to talk about that. Let's talk about racing. It's been a rough 12 to 24 hours. So, yes, absolutely. I agree with your comment. Josh Berry, $7,100 starting in 5th. I think he's a little upside down here. Josh Berry he's definitely got the crew chief. He's definitely got the talent. He raced his butt off in the Xfinity race yesterday with a crap car, and ended up finishing decent. I think we're kind of lined up for like a 15th place, maybe 10th. I don't think Josh Berry's gonna send this thing in and win this race. I mean, anything's possible, but all the statistics are not lining up for that. So I think Josh Berry kind of outkicked his coverage a little bit. Eric Jones, $7,000, starting 23rd, 27th in single lap. And once again, I don't get why Eric Jones can't run consecutive laps. Week after week, he keeps missing consecutive lap averages. I just don't know if they're that far off when they unload that they've got to come in and make adjustments immediately. But he's got a decent history at Pocono. 13.7 out of 12 starts at the 5 tracks we're comparing to. He's actually been faring better. 18.6. The trend line is looking better for Eric Jones. But starting 23rd, I don't think this is kind of, you might get 4 or 5 spots at place differential. I think he's 15th to 20th. You might get lucky and get 10 and get to 13th. But I'm not looking for a top 10 from Eric Jones. It's just nothing there in the numbers that tell us that. Michael McDowell, really good in practice. 5th in single lap, 7th in 5 lap. I think this lines up well for a potential Michael McDowell top 10 type of day. Or just missing a top 10, maybe 11th or 12th. So maybe 10 spots at place differential. So yeah, I like taking some shots on Michael McDowell, but just kind of like Bubba Wallace, I think Michael McDowell is probably going to be decently owned. So buyer beware on that one. Todd Gilliland. This may be the cheap pick, but I don't think it's going to be a sleeper pick. Starting in 33rd, I think he has a great crew chief that loves to play strategy games, and the strategy games have worked out really well so far for them this year. Pocono definitely has a lot of strategy potential. If we see an early caution, I definitely see Todd Gilliland going against the grain. If nobody comes in for tires, Todd Gilliland's going to come in for tires. Same thing with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Harrison Burton. They're going to go opposite of the grain. And try to gain some track position. So I definitely like the place differential here with Todd Gilliland. With that being said, this is not the quiet little Cinderella that he was 5, 8, 10 weeks ago. People are starting to notice Todd Gilliland. Todd Gilliland is now scoring. He scored, I think, in the last 6 races, he is 6th in points. For those 6 races. So Todd Gilliland has the sleeping giant has been awoken with Todd Gilliland. So I think he probably gets pretty decently owned. He's not going to be the sleeper that he once was. Austin Cindric, 7th in single lap, 4th in 5 lap consecutive race. So he has speed. His average finish in the last 5 races now, that does include the win at Gateway. So maybe skewed a little bit. I think this is a kind of a finish where you start type race for Austin Cindric. Like I said, the Fords just didn't seem to have what the Toyotas and the Chevys or the Gibbs and the Hendrick cars had. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. starting in 31st. I mean, this is another one they've got to play the strategy game. So I don't mind taking the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I mean, he was faster in practice than he was where he's starting. And he finished 7th last year, and that was due to some strategies. But I mean, his average finish is 10 spots better than where he's starting. So I definitely don't mind the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. play at 6,500. There's definitely some value there. Carson Hocevar is probably going to finish 15th. Practice in single lap in 10th. 13th and 5 lap consecutive average. He's got a 13.7 average finish. And Carson Hocevar is, in my opinion, other than a couple little issues he's had this year where he decided to wreck Harrison Burton and decided he wanted to try to throw a caution, I think Carson Hocevar, he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do this year. Go out, finish races, race well, race hard, stay on the lead lap, and get the finishes and continue to learn these tracks and learn these cars and learn how to race cleanly around these cup drivers. So far, he's been doing that. He had a little bit of a hiccup in the last couple of weeks. I think he tries to keep his nose clean, hopefully, this week, and ends up and goes and has a pretty decent day. I think it's probably going to be where he starts. So if you think 6,400 finishing 15th is worth it, it's going to be close. He's probably, I mean, that's probably only like 26 points, 27 points. AJ Allmendinger starting in 26, 6,300. He was 20th in single lap, 24th in 5-lap consecutive average. He does have a 14th place finish, but only 2 samples. He does not, in his total career history at Pocono, out of 23 total starts, only has 2 top 10s, no top 5s, and only half the time he finishes in the top 20. So, AJ's probably a 20th place driver, maybe sneaks 20th to 15th place. So, Justin Haley, I don't know why they missed so bad in practice and qualifying. But, like I said earlier, this track is huge. They will have plenty of time to make adjustments. They won't, no fear of them going a lap down early. So, they'll make adjustments. This may be one of those races that just Justin Haley just doesn't play well. I'll have some ownership just because he has had a really good trend line going. But it would not shock me if Justin Haley just has an off weekend. So he's got 3 starts here with a 27.7 average finish. This is not something that we're lighting the world on fire here with Justin Haley. So I will be a little bit cautious with Justin Haley this week just because nothing's pointing in the right direction. That doesn't mean they can't turn it around and he go and get a top 20 finish. And if that happens, he's going to finish well. He's going to finish Draftkings well. Ryan Preece, same thing. All the Stewart-Haas guys definitely struggled except for Josh Berry in practice and qualifying. Long race, plenty of time to make changes, no fear of going a lap down. Starting in 36, I don't mind taking shots on Ryan Preece here. And he's probably going to get a few shots because he's starting next to last. So definitely keep that in mind as we're looking for drivers to take. But his average finish is, I mean, even if he just gets his average finish, I mean, that's almost 13 spots of place differential, which is a lot. So just go get your average finish there, Ryan. That's all we need. Austin Dillon starting in 17th. I mean, once again, RCR is just on the struggle bus. And it's going to be a tough pick to pick. His practice speeds were not great, so I'm probably a fade on Austin Dillon. Just don't really have a whole lot of interest until RCR starts to show me consistently that they have fixed the gremlins that are going on over there, and I don't think it's going to be this year. We're going to have some one-offs where either Austin or Kyle Busch end up doing well, but I think as a whole in consistency, it's not looking all that great. Zane Smith, you outkicked your coverage, buddy. Zane's been running much better lately. I get it. I understand. But starting in 9th, that's you way outkicked your coverage. On your... I think it's a win if he finishes 9th in this race. There's just too many other guys that are really, really good at this track. And no. I think Zane's due for a 20th place finish, and that's just headed in the wrong direction. John Hunter Nemechek, 21st place average finish, 36th in single lap, 32nd in 5-lap consecutive average. Legacy has been struggling. I mean, I'll have a couple small, might have 3 or 4 lineups, less than 10%. Yeah, I just don't like the way this is lining up back here. Corey LaJoy, he was faster in practice than he was where he's starting. His average finish is not great here. He has no top 20s ever at Pocono. So, I mean, take a couple of shots. I mean, this is literally the needle in the haystack. It's like, okay, if I'm running 40 different lineups, I'm going to run 4 lineups with Corey LaJoy. I'm going to run 4 lineups with John Hunter Nemechek. I'm going to run 4 lineups with Ryan Preece. I'm going to run 4 lineups with these other people. And there's going to be the mix and match of back of the pack cheap value drivers that I'm going to place with Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick and Kyle Larson and all those guys. So that's probably how this is going to line up. But even then, as if you remember, only 1.6 out of 15 come from starting spots of 30th or worse show up in the top 15 in points. Only one. Where 20 to 29 show up 4 times. And really the ideal spots between that 10 and 20. So, Daniel Hemrick starting in 27th. So we're really not trying to feed from the very back of the pack. But let's keep going here. Daniel Hemrick, 5,400, starting 27th, 25th in single lap, 22nd in 5-lap consecutive average. I mean, he does have 2 starts here with a 10th place average finish. Okay. And I think that was in worse equipment. Not that can't get much worse than what he's driving so far this year, which really sucks for Colin because they are a really good race team. But not so much this year. I don't understand what's going on. I mean, maybe he's take some shots on Daniel Hemrick. He's been performing better each week, so I don't mind going after some Daniel Hemrick as maybe a sleepy pick, value pick. Harrison Burton. I mean, if Harrison Burton's qualified 32nd, I would have more interest. But starting 22nd, I think he just outkicked. I mean, even if he goes and gets his 8th place finish now, I mean, an 8th place finish is big. But starting in 22nd, I would much rather take Hemrick starting in 27th than Harrison Burton. I think it's just a better car and a better driver. But he does have a 16.5 average finish. I mean, maybe take a couple of shots. I mean, if you're running 20 lineups, you run 1 or 2. Running 40, maybe 2 to 3. I don't mind taking a couple of shots because they do like to play the strategy game. Cody Ware, just no interest here. 32nd in single lap, 28th in 5-lap consecutive average. He's got a 30th place average finish over 4 starts here. This is not a track where we see a ton of attrition. I say that and they'll pile up in turn 1, lap 1, and Cody Ware will be like, do. Ended up getting a top 10 or something weird. Yeah, I'm going to fade off of Cody Ware, even starting in 36. I mean, you can take a couple shots, but I don't think it's worth it. Same thing with J.J. Yeley starting in 37th. I mean, good for the 44 team for being out here, but, I mean, honestly, just don't think that it's, I think he might go a lap down in the first stage. They're just that far off. I'm not sure why they're doing this. They're not a chartered team. They're not going to make very much money unless they just got a decent check from somebody sponsor. All right, let's take a look at our potential dominator or really good finishers. Any one of these 4, and a mixed match of these 4, I really, really, really like. Reddick, I think easily could win this thing hands down. Bell, same way. Been super fast lately. Kyle Larson, always pretty decent here. Just seems to always find Denny Hamlin, and Denny Hamlin ends up screwing up his day. But with that being said, Denny Hamlin does have 8/7 wins here at the Tricky Triangle, so he's going to be very good, especially on the long runs. This could easily line up for Ty Gibbs as a big day and get his first victory. Martin Truex Jr. was extremely fast in practice and qualifying, could easily do well. William Byron also, this lines up really well for William Byron to start to improve his year and get some points. Chase Elliott, I mean, decent possible place differential for Chase Elliott and just get a solid top 5 finish there. Guys coming from the back, really like the Bubba Wallace play, the Todd Gillen play, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., maybe Ross Chastain. And down here on our cheap value picks, take some shots on Justin Haley. Maybe they just had a bad practice. Ryan Preece, same thing. They got plenty of time to make adjustments along with Briscoe, Gregson, Hemrick. I all like them for place differential and value. You can take some shots on Corey LaJoy. A little bit more risky. He just hasn't ever finished in the top 20. Harrison Burton, I think, outkicked his coverage. Same thing with Austin Dillon. I'm not interested in J.J. Elliott or Cody Ware. And Zane Smith absolutely just killed it in qualifying, and that's not what we're looking for Zane Smith for DraftKings. So either way, go enjoy a sporting event today. Let's wash our minds of what happened yesterday, and let's have a good race. Let's enjoy some sporting activities, and be kind to each other. And we'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Take a good deep breath. Get ready to roll here. Only about one thing tonight, getting the W's, so got to be around at the end to do that. Get ready to roll tonight, boys. Let's go have some fun.
Don't get me any more fired up than I already am.
All the way to the checkered. You are fine. Nobody's got to run. Checker time, baby!
Hell yeah!
Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work. Keep putting yourself in position. We'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
Great job, guys.
Excellent work, my man. Excellent work. Thank you.
Man, that's awesome. Set out with a goal, we got it here, bud. Thank you very much.
Really proud of you, man. Drove your butt off tonight. We had the fastest car here, bud.
Probably killed our deal there. Just feel like I gave one away. Yeah, boys. Way to rebound. Great job.
Great job, bud. Really good job. Appreciate you hanging in there with us all weekend.
What a weekend. Good job. Thank you.